Hello friends! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Elise and this is my mystical bookshelf. And today I have for you another audiobook that I have already listened to, but I decided to listen to it again. So today we have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, and it is narrated by Samara McLaren. And this book, I read it last year, or the year before that. I think I read it the year that it came out. So I read it in 2022, and it was so good when I first listened to it. I loved it so much. It was a 5-star read for me, and it's definitely one of my favorite books that I've ever listened to, and ever had the pleasure to listen to. And Samara McLaren is a great narrator, and it's just so cozy. It's such a cozy book. And I decided to re-listen to it because I felt like I was in kind of a reading slump, and I couldn't get out of it. And I was like, I need to listen to something that I've already listened to, and maybe that'll help me get out of my reading slump. So I decided to listen to this. And it definitely helped. It always helps if I re-listen to or reread a book that I know that I already like. That's kind of how I get out of a reading slump. And this book is no exception. It's one of my favorite books. And it was definitely a 5-star the second time I listened to it. And since I hadn't listened to it in a while, I kind of forgot what it was about. So it was kind of like I read it for the first time all over again. Which is always an interesting feeling for me because there's a lot of books that I've read that I really enjoyed, and I would love to be able to listen to it or read it again for the first time. And that's kind of how this felt. So it was really interesting for me to experience that feeling all over again because I wasn't expecting to feel this strongly about my re-listen on it. And I forgot how kind of sad and bittersweet that it all felt at the same time. So this book follows Mika. Her name is Mika Moon, and she is a witch, and she lives in England, and she doesn't have a family per se. She lives by herself, and she does YouTube videos, which is interesting. And she does YouTube videos about being a witch, which I think is interesting. But she does it in a way where it seems like it's fake, but it's really not. So that's kind of cool. And I really like her as a character. She's very cute. She's very sweet. And she's really outgoing and bubbly and positive. And she's not positive in that really annoying, toxic positivity way. She's positive in a way that feels like genuine. Like a genuinely positive person. Which is something that I enjoy listening to and reading about. And she is one of the few witches in England that, and she's a part of this society. That's where it gets the name. So she meets with this society every few months, and she doesn't really know any other witches. She doesn't really have many friends. And even though she meets with this society, she doesn't really know anybody. Not really, anyway. And it's kind of about her finding her found family and getting to know her as a person and who she is and how she became to be. And it's really good. It's a really great origin story for someone like Mika. And how do I want to say this? I really like learning about her as a character. She's very well-rounded, and she's got a lot of depth. And that's what I really like in characters when I listen to books like this, is finding out who they are as a person deep in their soul. And Mika has gone through a lot of stuff in her life. She lost her mom when she was a baby, and it's really weird. I feel like all witch books are kind of the same, but kind of not the same at the same time. In every witch book that I've read, they always are secretive. Like, that's one thing about witch books that I've noticed, is they're always secretive and humans don't know about them, or they're not supposed to. And another thing I've noticed is there's either a community of them that is really close-knit, like in Thistle Grove, or they're by themselves, like in this book. Or they're not allowed to be around other witches. So it's either one extreme or the other extreme. It's never anything in the middle. So like for Thistle Grove, all of those witches are like friends, and they all have this society together, and they're all secretive from humans, but they're all allowed to be together. But in Mika's world, she's not allowed to be around other witches, which I thought was very interesting. And that's something that I have noticed as a theme. It's like witches are either in a really close-knit community or they're by themselves. And in this book, she's by herself, and she's very lonely. And she always has to move from one place to another, so she doesn't get too attached to anything or anyone. And it's kind of a sad existence for Mika. But Mika's life kind of gets turned around when she finds this job. It's kind of like she's a nanny, or a nanny, I guess, or a teacher. So she gets this job as a teacher for 3 witches who are little girls. And they are in like elementary school aged, and they're all adoptive sisters. And they all live together with this other family who's sort of a found family. They're not related, and none of their caregivers are related. So they live with, there's lots of characters in this story. And I don't know if I'm going to remember all of their names or not, but I just listened to it, so I hope I do. But there's Mika, obviously. Then there's Ian, who is like the girl's main caregiver. And then there's his husband, Ken, who is the gardener for this estate that Ian lives on. And then there's Jamie, who is also one of the girl's main caregivers. He's a librarian, and he's Mika's love interest in this book, and he's a really good character. He's also very well-rounded, and we also get to know him really well. And at first he's kind of rude to Mika, I guess, and he kind of gives off this vibe that he's grumpy and he doesn't want to be around other people, and he definitely has social anxiety, and he doesn't really vibe with Mika at first. He thinks she's a fraud, a fake, not a real witch, something like that. And he doesn't trust her. And so we kind of go through their relationship together and how they get to know one another and they fall in love. This is a very slow burn. They don't really get together until towards the end of the book, but that's totally okay with me because I was totally invested in their journey. And I really liked seeing them go from like not liking each other to sort of liking each other to being friends and then to being lovers towards the very end. And I thought that was very cute. So he's one of the main caregivers too. And then there's also the maid. Oh my gosh, I think her name's Lucy. I'm almost positive her name's Lucy. She's also the girls, one of their caregivers. She's like the maid at this estate, and this estate belongs to this woman who is an archaeologist. And she's also a witch, but Mika had never heard of her. And I can't remember what her name is, but like she's kind of this big catalyst in this book for Mika even being considered for this job. Because these young girls, their names are Altamira, Terracotta, and Rosetta. And they are all like very young novice witches, and they don't know how to control their powers. And Ian is like hell-bent on finding them a nanny and a teacher. And he finds Mika, and he says, she's perfect. I want her, like right now. And he calls her up, and then she flies over to where they are in a different part of England. Or I don't know if she flies. I think she just drives. But so she goes to live with them on their estate. And like, she doesn't know anything about them, and she doesn't know anything about this woman who is supposedly a witch. And I really wish I could remember her name, because she's like a really big catalyst in this book. And there's like a really huge plot twist with her too, and that's one of the things I'm going to spoil in this book for anybody who hasn't read it. Please go read it first and then come back. But like one of the big plot twists, Lillian, her name's Lillian. Ah, I'm so glad I can remember that. But yeah, so Lillian, we find out, was a witch, and the girl's adoptive mother. Like, she goes and adopts all these young girls, but she's not present right now, and we don't know why. Because it seems like Lillian really loves these girls enough to adopt them, and so we kind of try to piece together why she's not present. And Mika tries to piece that together, especially because she's very concerned with why Lillian isn't present in the girls' lives. But we end up finding out that Lillian is dead, and we don't find that out until like the very end of the book. And I'm like, whoa, I was thrown for a whirlwind when I first read that. Because it was like so unexpected. That came like out of nowhere for me. Like, I kind of thought Lillian might, I don't know, I wasn't expecting her to be dead. I was just expecting her to like not want to be a witch or something, and like just try to give the girls the best care or leave them in the best hands for care, but I wasn't expecting her to be like dead. But yeah, so they try and hide Lillian's death because apparently this estate of Lillian's will get taken away if they find out that she's no longer living there and no longer living. But yeah, so that's like the big plot twist in this book, is how Mika can help these people keep their estate and keep all these girls together. And another interesting part of this magic system in this book is the fact that Primrose is the head witch of this coven, I guess, even though it's not really a coven because they don't really get to know each other and they don't live together. None of them are really bound by anything besides magic. So Primrose is kind of like the head of everything, and she was Mika's caregiver, because Mika, this is the one part that I forgot to mention in the beginning. It was all of these witches are like orphaned. Like, none of the witches in this magic system have parents. Like, that's another weird thing that I have never seen before in a witch book that I've read, is the fact that none of them have moms or dads. There was a curse put on every witch that was ever born to never have a parent. And that is something that is very unique to this magic system. Because every other witch book I've read, all of the girls or guys who are warlocks or witches have at least one parent. But in this book, they're all orphans. So Primrose is the head of the coven, and she's also Mika's like adoptive parent. And Mika lives with her for like most of her life. And we kind of get to know Mika and know her personality and her childhood. And we learn a lot of deep stuff that happened to her. We learn that she never really felt loved as a child. And we learn that she's really lonely and that she wishes she could be a part of a family. And so when she becomes a part of this little found family with Altamira and Terracotta and Rosetta and the rest of the little family that lives at that estate, she really feels like she belongs for the first time. So that was really sweet. And it's kind of bittersweet towards the end. And it's kind of sad because Mika has been lied to. And it's shown that she has a lot of trauma towards being used and not being seen as a person, but being seen as someone who people only want her for her magic. She's been through many relationships where guys only want her for what she can do for them, not exactly her as a person, which is something that I thought was very sad, and I felt really bad for Mika. Because Mika seems like such a sweet person, and I can't imagine like not liking her or not like wanting to be her friend or not being able to love her, because she's a very lovable woman. She seems like a very lovable character. So when she comes across this opportunity to be a part of a family, she kind of jumps on it. And it's really sweet, but it's also really sad because when she finds out that everyone was lying to her about Lillian, she kind of feels betrayed. which I can totally understand why. And it's really upsetting to listen to it and read about it, because it's like, why wouldn't they just be honest with her? Like, after she tells them everything, she tells these people all the trauma that she went through. She tells them she had a boyfriend who used her. She tells them about how she never felt loved as a child. And they have the audacity to lie to her, even after all of that. And I'm just like, what are you people doing? Like, it just seems so wrong and messed up. And that was something that made me kind of angry about the book. Because it's like, if someone tells you all of the past trauma that they've been through, you would think you wouldn't want to put them through that, and you would want to tell them the truth. So when she figures out they're lying, and that Lillian is not alive, and that the only reason why that they wanted her there was so that she could pretend to be Lillian, she kind of feels like, wow, did they ever really like me? Like, she kind of questions everything, like, at that point. Excuse me. And she questions whether they really like her as a person or not. And it's kind of sad. It made me almost cry. And I was listening to this at work, so I was like, man, I can't cry right now. This is not the place to cry. So I was listening to it, and I was like, I forgot how sad that was. But in the end, like, after they've totally explained everything and explained that they really do like Mika for who she is, and they tell her that they want her to be a part of their family permanently, then Mika kind of comes around and is like, okay, I forgive you, I understand why you did it, and she understands why they lied to her and stuff like that. So it kind of ends on a good note, obviously. It ends on a happy note, which I thought was good. And so everyone comes to an understanding towards the end, and Mika finally finds her family, and she becomes the permanent guardian for Altamira and Terracotta and Rosetta. And when I tell you that I was super happy about that, I was super happy about that. Like, it made me tear up with tears of joy at that part. Like, I felt so happy that Mika found her family, and she found the people that she wants to spend the rest of her life with, like, as like a family. And her and Jamie end up getting together at the end, and I thought that was also really sweet, because they are a perfect match for each other. Like, they really even each other out, and we get to know Jamie too, and we get to know his past traumas, and we understand why he's grumpy, because he's also had a hard life as a child, and he had a hard family life too, so we understand why he's grumpy. And Mika and him balance each other out, and we get to see Jamie develop into a better person. And he's definitely not as grumpy towards the end, which I also thought was very sweet. I love it when the grumpy person kind of has this character arc where they're not as grumpy anymore, or their personality changes just slightly so that he's more lovable towards the end. So it's really cool to see both of them go through that. And it's also nice to watch the girls, like, grow into their magic and learn how to control their powers, because that's the big thing with Mika, is having her there to teach them about magic. And it was really interesting to see them, like, come into their own. And I just really love this book. I love the family vibes, I love the romance, and I just loved everything about it. It was a 5-star, and if you haven't read it, I totally recommend reading it. It was definitely one of my favorite books, and it always will be. And I will probably listen to it again at some point, because that's the magic key to my reading slumps, is if I'm in a reading slump, I go back to my favorite book and I listen to it. So either I'm going to go back to reading this if I'm in a reading slump, or I will go back to Payback's a Witch, because that's also a book that totally gets me out of my reading slumps. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on it, and that's The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. And I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on it, and if you have read it, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to talk with you. And I appreciate all my subscribers, and I thank you for all your support. And please consider liking my videos, and if you're new here, please subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my community. And I just thank you for everything, guys. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, friends!